The following conversation is very applicable to most of us. It enlightens the fact that no matter how successful we are in life, we will never find true lasting peace and happiness because everything in the world is fleeting, it's temporary. Yet we go out in the world because we're conditioned to do that, to find this lasting happiness. And we do that in careers and relationships and wealth building and so on. We all know the ways. But as this devotee discusses, that most of us who have been successful still end up in a state of lack, a state of dissatisfaction and misery. So it's not just those of us who have so-called failed in life, or life isn't working out as planned, do we become miserable. It's even those who are successful in life. But it needs to be made clear that this message isn't saying that going out and accumulating wealth and having wonderful relationships and being successful is the problem. The problem is our attachment to that. See, we think that these exterior attributes have a quality within them that will satisfy us, that will we add to ourself, and that will make us whole and complete. And that is just not the truth. It is not until we turn within to find the permanence of being to be everything that we seek. So let this conversation between the two of us, who we've had half a dozen conversations like this over the last year, let this be just, one man's journey to this same message. So it wasn't until he turned within that he discovered everything he was after in life, and now he is free to experience his wealth, not being attached to it. So may this experience help you in your journey back to the peace and love of yourself. Yeah, Peter, thanks for joining me. I look forward to this conversation together. I think it's going to be a lot of what a lot of the seekers in this message are interested in hearing, is like what I would call our origin story. Like, how did this come into your life? Why did this come into your life?
Yeah.
I mean, and why did it take so darn long to find it? It's almost like it's the common man's story to enlightenment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, would you like to share your origin story?
Okay. Yeah. Um, don't know how far do I want to go back, or should I go back? Well, okay. When I was a kid, growing up, um, I was a little bit uh, probably unusual in some respects because I naturally didn't accept any limitation. If someone tried to put limitations on me, no, hang on a minute. That person's a human being. I'm a human being. If they can do it, then I can do it. So I wouldn't accept limitations. And so I set out to become successful in business. I had one particular relative who had been successful in business, and I thought, hey, that's kind of what I want to do. And I was brought up in an era where we used to see on the TV people like Roger Moore playing parts in Simon Templar and James Bond, and all these people seemed to have a great life. They had plenty of money, sports cars, beautiful women, and they seemed on the screen to be happy. And I thought, that's what I got to do if I want to be happy. I've got to do this. So I set out to become successful, because it wasn't me, but success in happened. Let's put it that way. And all the little things which I felt I needed to get in order to be happy, the car and all that sort of stuff, was all achieved. And then I moved to Monte Carlo, and I lived in Monte Carlo for 5 years. And I was surrounded by people who were much more successful than I was, and had all the things which I wanted, but multiplied by 10 or 20. And I noticed that they weren't walking around smiling all day. Ultimately, what I wanted was continual happiness. And I woke up to the fact that they weren't actually doing it. They weren't getting it. And I used to go to a cafe every morning, an outdoor cafe, and I would read an English newspaper. And there was another English guy who lived down there who saw me reading the paper, and he came over and introduced himself, and we had a chat, and we got on really well. His name was Adam. And he'd been in Monte Carlo about 20 years. And he was a meditator. And so we spoke about meditation, and I didn't know anything about it, but I got to know more through him, and I think I read a book or two that he had lent me. And so I was drawn into it a little bit at that point. This was back in 2007, something like that. And then one day I was coming down from my apartment. I was on the 23rd floor of an apartment building, and I was coming down to go up to the coffee place. And a guy tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, "Excuse me," he said, "do you know Adam?" And I said, "Yeah, I know Adam." And he said, "I thought so. I've seen you drinking coffee with him up the road." I said, "Yeah, yeah." He said, "Did you know he's dead?" I said, "What?" I was completely shocked. And he killed himself. And there was no sign that he was going to do that. Nothing, no indicator at all. And I began to, that really made me think, what am I doing here? What is this all about? All my childhood dreams have been achieved, everything I thought I wanted, except for the happiness bit. All the things, these things were supposed to give me happiness, and they didn't. And he'd been living for 20 years in Monte Carlo, and he'd gone and killed himself. He had a 13-year-old son, and I was really surprised that he'd done that, and having a 13-year-old son, because of his story. And so I thought I need to maybe go back to England and have another look at life and think about which direction I want to go in. And then I got into Ramana Maharshi, David Godman's book on Ramana Maharshi. I read that, and that was like,
Be as you are.
Yeah. That was a big woof, wow. This is really really something. So I went down the Ramana Maharshi path, and I also got this thing about oneness relatively simply. The way I used to look at it was that the universe is infinite. If the universe is infinite, then it goes on forever. There's no boundary, there's no end. So if the universe is infinite, that infinity doesn't stop where my body starts. There can't be me plus an infinite universe, because it wouldn't be infinite if that was the case. So the lights went on, and I get what we're talking about here with this oneness. It has to be one. We have to be in oneness. And when I came back to England, I started to do Aikido. I'd done other martial arts before, but I was drawn to Aikido because of its circular flowing nature. And I had this idea that it might be linked in some way or connected to oneness and Ramana Maharshi's ideas. And also because the founder of Aikido had been a very religious teenager and almost became a monk. And so I felt he'd taken that into what he was doing with Aikido. And when I practiced Aikido, I saw that the energy in the dojo, the space was energy, the people were energy, and the whole thing was a moving, revolving pattern. That there wasn't a separation; it was all one movement of energy, not being divided into you and an opponent, for instance, or a partner that you might be practicing with. That it was all one, and it's really from that this has come about. So that was in 2008 when that started. And so that's how it ended up.
Yeah, I mean, it seems as if there's two typical ways that somebody ends up in this message, and that is you're either a truth seeker and you just want to know the truth of reality, or it has to do with some sort of suffering, where suffering gets to a point to where you're like, I can't take it. I'm willing to do whatever I can to be happy. And if you could say, lucky enough, this message comes to you somehow, because it's definitely not available in the West. It's just absolutely nowhere. It's not in our education. It's not in our religions. It's not in our spirituality. It's not in sports or our arts or theaters or anything like that. It's so amazing how absent it is. And then when you discover it and you start to pull back the layers of it and go deeper and deeper, and if you do actually end up in India, and especially, Ramana Maharshi's path, you're like, where has this been? Like, how could this be absolutely absent from my life as a possibility? Right? That's like the thing. It's like we've got all these paths that we could go down, yogas and therapies and drugs. And I mean, it's just we all know the multitude of ways that we try to be happy, but it's missing one piece, self, or the unified field, as scientists might call it.
Yeah.
The oneness, the true oneness, and how to get back there through self. That isn't available. At least it wasn't for this guy. I mean, would you agree with that? It's like it's completely absent.
Yeah, absolutely. I had an interesting little thing happen this morning. I'd replied to I'd put a comment on a YouTube about the universe and expanding universe, all that kind of stuff. And I couldn't understand. I've made comments about that before, and I just don't understand why people can't get this thing about infinity. And scientists keep saying that the universe is expanding. And I keep saying on comments, the universe is infinite. Infinity can't expand because it's already everywhere. So that's just not the case. Then I had a bit of an awakening when I realized what was going on, I think, with the scientists. And that is that they think that the universe is expanding because the relative distance between planets may be growing.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that space is getting any bigger. And I liken it to, let's supposing you had a room in a house, a big room, with nothing in it, except in the middle there's a dining table with chairs around it. And it's sitting there in the middle. Then you go up to the chairs and you move them out. Then it may appear that the gap between the chairs is expanding, but the room isn't growing. It isn't affecting the room at all. And then they get confused, thinking that because planets are moving apart from each other, that space itself is expanding. But it's infinite, and so it doesn't need to expand because it's everywhere, and it can't because it's everywhere. And they don't see. And that, I think, is where I think it would be a hell of a change. It'd be something if people could see that. The mind, obviously, has a hell of a problem with that. But it's an intuitive thing that you can feel that's outside of the mind. The mind is the wrong tool to use for this stuff. It's like trying to use a screwdriver to hammer in a nail. You know, screwdrivers are useful, but they're damn useless when it comes to hammering in nails. You need a hammer. But everyone's using a screwdriver to hammer the nail in.
Yeah, Carl Jung said it best, and he's like, you can't measure the West and the East because they're incommensurable. Like, and so exactly to your point, our Western mind is trying to measure the Eastern heart. So this finite tool is trying to measure the infinite, and it can't, because the finite can't get its arms big enough to get around the infinite and go, oh, I know this, and label it as something, right? It's kind of like you're measuring your height with a thermometer.
Yeah.
They're incommensurable. They're both very useful, like the screwdriver and the hammer, but you can't use the mind. You have to drop the mind to experience your heart, right? You got to drop the finite to experience the infinite. So I completely agree. When you analyze the infinite more, if the infinite does exist, then you have to be that by definition.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You have to be the one somehow. And the real question is, if you get there, is why do I feel separate then? Right? That's the ultimate question. That's the question that sends you really off on the answer, if you're willing to allow yourself to propose that question to yourself, which you did. You were thirsty to be happy. You weren't thirsty to be successful, because that definitely showed that that doesn't bring happiness. And like your friend, it could bring the demise.
Yep.
Right? So yeah, oh, go ahead.
Go on that. There's an interesting thing. This, when we're talking about infinity, and so we're talking about oneness, and that I can't be outside of infinity. The infinity doesn't stop where this body starts. Then it's the space that I'm being aware of. Space is, I think we're we completely ignore actual space. I don't mean outer space. I mean just space here between me and the screen. The space. I think I put a comment somewhere saying it's like there's a young fish and an old fish in a lake, and the young fish says, I've been right to the end of the lake and back this morning, and I still can't find any of this water stuff you're talking about. And we're that way with space. We completely ignore it. But I Googled not long ago to ask the question, how much inside an atom is space? And I was amazed at the response that came from the computer. Scientists now know that in every atom, which makes up apparently matter, it's 99.99999999999% space. It's 12 nines after the decimal point.
A trillion.
Is that what it is?
Well, yeah, a trillion. That's Yeah.
1/trillionth of something they reckon is not space. But that, I suppose, if you break that down, you might find that that's 99.99999%.
Yeah, a trillionth.
The trillion, yeah, the trillionth, whatever. So everybody knows that, the scientists know that there's nothing but space, which gives a huge amount of credence to the fact that everything's an appearance, you know.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they call it the unified field, right? So when they say that everything that we know has an underlying reality to it. And once you get to this thing, there's still another underlying reality. So, I mean, some of the first ones, like if you had wood's carbohydrates. So carbohydrates give it its wood's reality. Carbohydrates are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen are made up of, you know, electrons, protons, and neutrons. And you go all the way down. They've got it all the way down, right, into like the bosons and the gluons, and you get down to dark energy or dark matter, and then dark energy, and that is a two-dimensional plane of infinite potential. And that's what we're describing here, right? The infinite. That is, they can get to that. And what is that to them? It's a two-dimensional plane of infinite potential. It's a mathematical equation. It doesn't have any substance to it. But the logic says that everything that we know arises out of this no thingness.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, then I have to be, to your point, I have to be that somehow.
Yeah.
So how do we experience ourselves as that? But I think the interesting question here is that we are in this apparent world, living this apparent life, it seems, and we have to make money and generate places to live and clothes to wear, and it doesn't mean that success is not, it doesn't mean that it's not okay. It success can happen. You in a way, you don't have a choice if it does or not. But how is it that you can have these simultaneous experiences going on, the happiness that you're experiencing now, and still be successful? Because one of the biggest pushbacks I get is, first I have to be successful and then I can be happy.
Mm.
That is our biggest hurdle to get over here. That's what we've been sold. And
Yeah.
can you be happy and then be successful?
Yeah. But if you're happy, you won't give a damn whether you're successful anyway. You only want to be happy.
Yes.
The reason.
Right to the point. That's it. Yes. And if success comes out of that, then it comes out of that.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. Right? Success could just be having a simple apartment and, making a couple grand a month. That could be, we don't know. Where we fail is to realize when you are permanently happy, nothing else matters. Right? Status, wealth, material items, because you have the number one asset.
Yeah.
Peace and fulfillment. Yeah, and with that, you take that into the world and do what is coming through you. Your dharma or your destiny. And wherever that leads you, that's where that leads you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think the trick is it's somehow showing somebody the piece of themselves, and then you take that out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
that's the Western's dilemma. The Western Hemisphere's dilemma is how to change it to where first I have to be successful, then I can be happy, into happiness is who you are, and then you share that with the world.
Yeah, yeah. I think you got to see through the illusions and the stories. You know, as a kid, when I was seeing stuff on the TV and thought, hey, this is the way to be. This is the way to live. You know, nobody could persuade me otherwise. I mean, my father wasn't particularly encouraging. You know, he used to say, well, you can't be that successful. I mean, you know, okay, you'll get to this level and that's okay, but that's it. And I used to go, you want to bet? You watch, you know, and so success kind of happened. Of course, it wasn't me that was doing it. I see there is no me. So this being was kind of lucky in a way, in that it all happened. Things just happened. We're not in control of what goes on at all. Every thought we have, there's not a Peter that's having that thought. I'm staggered and amazed now as I can go out and get in the car and be driving down the road, and I can have the music on and I'm driving along and I've got a smile on my face, and out of absolutely nowhere a thought can pop up and say, you're nearly out of coffee, you need to get some coffee. And I'm going, shit, where the hell did that come from? Who's up there? It's like there's an angel up there that's saying, send him the coffee, he's nearly out. Okay, here it is. And out of nowhere this thought comes, and you begin to see that whatever decisions you made, you didn't make it.
Yeah.
You know, you don't decide anything. A decision is made, and then you claim the decision afterwards. Your ego decision, but you didn't make it. So none of the decisions that I made in business were ever me making them. They were made, and then I claimed them. And if I got lucky, eventually, after a lot of trying, I eventually got lucky, and you know, that was it. It wasn't me that was doing it. But if you'd have told me when I was 8, 9, 10 years old that being successful was not something that was going to make you happy, I said, you got to be joking. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and what you said about they're not your thoughts, that's been proven scientifically. Right.
Yeah.
So this isn't just some spirituality, verbiage. This is scientifically proven that, yeah, it happens. Decisions are made back here somewhere, 6 to 8 seconds before they're transferred up to where the ego hangs out, and the ego claims that it did it. So the ego is the ultimate afterthought. Reality happens 6 to 8 seconds prior to it thinking that it happens. So when in meditation, when you start to dissolve that egoic mind, you could view it as you are starting to move back. This 8 seconds goes to 6 seconds, goes to 4 seconds, goes to 2 seconds, and eventually you're in line with reality as it's happening, and that's experienced as peace.
Yes.
There's no separation there.
Yeah.
And then you go silent.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, I think the whole businessman story, right? I mean, I was in business myself, and tried to be successful, and in that created my misery. So it's a very common story. You don't have to be in business to try to be successful, right? There's many different aspects to what that means. I think what it comes down to is the problem is when you identify as somebody who is trying to be successful, or somebody who has gained that success. This is my wealth. This is my material item. This is my status. I did this. It's in that me is where everything goes haywire.
Yeah.
It's not building successful business or businesses that fail or having stuff or not having stuff. That's just what's happening. That has nothing to do with, that's not what's wrong, so to speak. The wrong is somebody that is claiming all of that, the doer. That's where things go haywire. So yeah.
In Monte Carlo, it's a great place to see it in action, because you see, for instance, you might see somebody who's got a new yacht, and the yacht's parked up, and they have a party because they got the new yacht, and it's they're all pretty happy because they got this new yacht. And 2 days later, doggone it, the guy next door's got a bigger yacht. What the hell have we got to do here? This guy got it. So he's feeling just the same as would be any guy, a 17-year-old who's got his first car, and then finds that the next door neighbor has just got one that's a bit newer, and that pisses him off. There's no difference in the actual experience, I had a friend come down to stay with me for a week or two, somebody I'd known some years, and he said, what's it like, Pete, living in Monte Carlo now, and you've done this and you got here. And I said, Nick, you and I have just walked down the same road. We're sitting at the same table and we're drinking the same cups of coffee. What's the difference? It's just now. The rest is bullshit, That's the experience now. Yeah.
Yeah. It can just be, you could say, a hard sell. That happiness can come prior to anything else.
Yeah.
And again, we can't beat ourselves up because of it too. This is our conditioning. This is our society. This has been ingrained into us since we even knew we existed. Right. So it's coming out of that conditioning and into the peace of the oneness or the infinite that we were chatting about. And in that, life is playing out, and however that plays out.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, I appreciate your openness, to share. It's in a way, everybody has the same story. Somehow it all kind of fits into everybody's got the same path. And if you're fortunate enough to be able to hear, like, hey, maybe the answer lies this way and not that way, and you're courageous enough to see if this is true or not, you will discover that it is, that peace lies within. It's who you are. You don't have it. You haven't lost it and you're trying to find it. It's who you actually are. And it's uncovering that, remembering that, to where the journey is and the peace lies. So again, Peter, I thank you, and I thank for our friendship. I mean, we spent 3 or 4 sessions together and chatting about this, and glad to see it would helped along the way.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Well, it's all there is.
That's right. Okay. I appreciate you and all of our time together.
Thank you. And likewise, Scott, thank you very much for giving me a call. Yeah.
You're welcome. All right, Peter.
Okay.
Take care.
You too.
Bye.